Welcome to the Your City podcast, where we get to know our neighbors so that we can be good neighbors. I'm your host, Aaron Williams, and today I'm joined by Jane Hamor and Cliff Blake, who are the leaders of the Art Commission for the City of Dover. We're going to talk to them about what their responsibilities are, how the commission affects the community, and how they came to be involved with it. Jane, Cliff, thank you for coming on to the show.
You're welcome. Good to be here.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. So we're going to start out our episode with a shout out for something in the community of Dover. Jane, is there something that you want to shout out?
Sure. I am going to give a shout out to the Art Center, which is owned by Rebecca Proctor. It is located at 1 Washington in the Mills. It's just kind of behind or below the Children's Museum over going towards the river. And Rebecca has been a big part of the community of Dover for many years. She used to have a smaller frame shop and gallery up in the Cochico Mills, and then moved down to those mills got converted to apartments. Mm-hmm. And so then the Chinbergs offered her this other space, which was really quite large. And in order to get her to move, they offered to fix it up for her. And so she jumped at it.
Yeah.
And today it is really, it's a pretty good sized gallery. She has regular exhibits. The New Hampshire Art Association exhibits in there. She features artists really from all over the United States and often international. And she also has studio space in there for local artists. So there are always local artists who are creating work. She has a print studio with a press and offers printing classes, and you can sign up if you're a printmaker, but you don't have a big press. You can sign up to use the press. And she's
sometimes access to machinery is really just
awesome.
All you need.
And other people.
Yeah,
and you get to talk to each other and compare notes, and it's just a really wonderful, warm, and welcoming space. And she's just a huge supporter of the arts.
All right. So Rebecca at the Art Center.
Yep.
And Cliff?
I think I will mention Denise LaFrance, who's the librarian at the Dover Public Library, which I'm a trustee there as well. So I work at for the Arts Commission and the
So you're on the board of trustees for the library?
I am.
Okay.
Full disclosure.
Yeah.
But the reason I would shout them out is they just tipped over 13,000 members of cardholders, which is more than a third, almost a half of the occupants of the city. Mm-hmm. And strangely enough, 6,000 of those only take out books electronically. So the function of the library is turning from just a place where you go in and read the newspaper or grab a book to really a fully functioning community center.
Yeah.
They have free, unlimited internet access there. They have a wonderful children's library downstairs. And really, they attract all the members of the community, really of all ages, for all the programs, between films and lectures. And they're even going to be, we're going to begin very soon with a lending library of things. So there'll be gardening utensils, there'll be home cooking utensils, and so on too. So it's not just about books.
Yeah.
An interesting part is they just gave up their CD library because no one rented the CDs anymore.
So they just stood there and they were taking up space.
Now the Friends of the Library just took them and sold them for $1 a piece. The Friends of the Library give back to the library as an organization. They also sponsor a lot of the contests. There's a Peeps contest going on now that they offer a prize for.
For Easter?
For Easter. Yes. And then they also are working on a book sale that's coming up very shortly too. So, and part of the proceeds from the book sale and some of the other activities from the Friends goes to pay for library passes. So you as a resident can go in and get one of the library passes to the Peabody Essex Museum or one of the other museums or the Woodman Museum.
So they take the proceeds of this and they use that to basically contribute to other community aspects, other community events.
It all goes, yep.
That's pretty cool. You know, You talking about the renting of things reminds me of my interview that I did with the Homewood Library. They have a telescope lending program, and so they let people borrow telescopes and stuff like that.
Yep, I think telescopes are going to be involved in that too. It's like there are going to be science projects. They also have a maker machine there where you can go in and use
the 3D,
the 3D,
3D printer.
Very cool. So Denise at the library.
Right.
Great job, Denise. So we're here today to talk about the Arts Commission. What is the Commission? What is it that they do?
Well, the commission is a part of the City of Dover's government.
Okay.
So we are not a nonprofit. We are just like the rest of the boards and commissions that the city has. And we're made up of 11 members. 9 of them are voting and 2 of them are alternates.
Okay.
So, so if one person isn't there, the alternate, can vote. However, we just consider everybody a member.
Yeah.
And
Just to be nice.
yeah, you do not need to be an artist or, have any specific artistic skill. We just are trying to have members who believe in the arts
Okay.
and want to continue to promote and keep the arts as a high point, in the city.
Yeah.
And so a lot of what our task is to help the city to develop policy that promotes the arts, that helps to integrate public art into the city, and have the city consider the arts in their planning.
Gotcha. So it's a board of people, and the city council appoints people to that, or do you apply for?
You apply.
Okay.
You apply, and then the city has an appointments committee.
Okay, and so the appointments committee will confirm or select from the list of applicants to be on the board, and that's how y'all got on there?
Okay. And we're all volunteers too.
So this is not paid position or anything like that. It's just because y'all love art.
Well, we like to facilitate art. As Jane said, we're not all artists. Some of the members are, but some of us just want to make sure that we perpetuate the arts in the city in all the areas.
So when you guys are talking with the city, you said that you're kind of like, I guess, guides or kind of just, making sure that topic is considered in the conversation, right? When you're guiding policy, what kinds of stuff are you looking for that you're like, oh, this is an opportunity for us?
Well, I have to say that when we first started, that's a while ago, probably about, 14 or 15 years ago, the arts were not didn't play a prominent role in Dover. But since then, the city has really embraced the arts, and they have very much supported the arts in a lot of their planning. We were originally part of the recreation department. As of this coming year, we'll be part of the planning department. And the city has designated a staff person is assigned to the Arts Commission.
So the role that y'all used to play was a little bit smaller, and it's been kind of expanding. Y'all are involved in more conversations over the years. Okay.
So, for example, if the zoning in the downtown area is set up so that if a developer is going to develop a building, there has to be a piece of public art. So the developer has to identify where that art would be, and then meet with a couple of people from planning and the Arts Commission, and they could present an idea that they want to have, or a location where they'd like to have a piece of public art. And sometimes what they present is perfectly acceptable and appropriate. And then other times we might make a suggestion that is, this would be more impactful in a particular space. than maybe what you were thinking of.
Mhm.
A lot of times, if there's someone who's a contractor or a developer, they might not have had to do that before. So they may not know, like, okay, so I have a very small space. What could I possibly put there
Mhm.
that would be art? So we work with them and help them to determine
Yeah.
what that might be.
Mhm. So in this, you're kind of trying to help give them ideas and inspiration of how to include.
Some people come to us in downtown Dover. The courthouse is being rehabbed into living space now
Oh,
on
okay.
First Street. And as part of that, the developer came to us with the idea for the courtyard that will be in front of that development when it's done, and it'll have an ADA walkway ramp going up with a garden space in the middle.
What is ADA?
American Disabilities Act.
Gotcha. Okay.
So in the middle, the developer had already contacted an artist who is going to be putting in about a 10-foot high square obelisk, which is going to be made of glass, and on each of the sides will be a different season, and it'll be lit from within.
Very cool.
So they came to us with that idea, and we just went, beautiful.
Right.
Go for
And
it.
it's a local artist.
There's another developer who has 2 or 3 projects going that had a meeting with Jane and I and members of the planning commission, the planning folks, to try and figure out what kind of art he can put in to hide a giant transformer that'll be outside one of his buildings. And he was originally thinking, well, maybe it'll be a mosaic, or maybe it'll be some sort of relief-based metal structure or
Yeah.
something. So people won't climb on it necessarily, but they'll appreciate the fact that it's a bit more than just a 2-dimensional piece.
Yeah.
So again, the art will disguise a function.
Very cool.
Mm.
So you're doing all of this, you're volunteering for it. You obviously care about this, and Dover is picking up on this. Why is art important for a city? Why should we be doing this with our public spaces?
Well, art is essential. And I think there's another city north of us where the mayor insists that art in schools, art and music are not options, that they are essential.
Okay.
And that they
They're
absolutely.
not electives.
No, art in a city isn't just there to be a pretty thing. I mean, it really is an attractor.
Mhm.
It is something that broadens the appeal of the city. It makes it more beautiful and functional, and also it just exemplifies a bit of beauty, and obviously
think
in
it's
the eye of the beholder too.
Yeah, but it's a reflection of the integrity of a community.
Oh, okay.
So public art is often visual,
Hmm.
but it could be a concert. And all of those kinds of things contribute to the quality of life for your community.
Mm.
So I really think that when you go to a community and you see that there's public art, I think you understand that that community values itself.
Mm.
There aren't too many people who feel like, I don't know why we're having art here. I think
Sure.
this, it enhances our community, and the way that we've been able to kind of go about that is sometimes we've used funding that was going to be spent for something anyway.
Hmm.
So we've been able to take that and start to think more creatively. And I think when we started to do that, many of our city officials realized that, oh, we could think about this in a different way.
Mm.
We don't have, it's not necessarily all dollar signs.
Yeah.
It's just thinking about it in a different way.
Yeah.
And, the idea that developers within a certain zoned area need to have public art is a way for the city to ensure that we have opportunities for public art within our community, but it doesn't have to come out of our tax base.
Mhm. Yeah. So I like that you were saying it's not just about the dollars, right? Like, you can look at this in a different way. There's something intangible here that we need to consider, that we need to think about, that beauty in itself has a value and we need to consider for that reason, the intangibility of it. I like that. That's really cool.
Hmm.
So when you guys are making decisions, you say that y'all will give suggestions, y'all will give guidance, and I guess in a way y'all have the decision-making power of
Yes.
what types of art get approved. How do you guys make those types of decisions when it comes to, like, how do you evaluate what is appropriate? How do you evaluate what is a good use or might make a better use?
It kind of depends on what the development is.
Mhm.
We had a developer that wanted to perhaps do some sort of a mosaic on the outside of the building. And what it might turn out to be is, again, I think I mentioned one of those, a piece of punched metal that is a bas relief from the building itself, so it could be lit from the back.
Okay.
And it just adds a bit of dimension to the structures around. Some of them are as simple as that. Some of them are more complicated, and Jane can talk to the mosaics that are up in the new parking garage in Dover. At each level of the parking garage has its own mosaic of a piece of history of the city.
Yeah.
Right. So we did a project a number of years ago with a grant from the New Hampshire State Council on the Arts, and we worked with children in an after-school program at the Seymour Osmond Community Center and an artist. And we had a different artist design 4 different icons that were emblematic of Dover.
Mm.
And the artist who was the mosaic creator used those to make large, kind of poster size mosaics,
Mhm.
and the worked with the children in the after school program to make them. And then this is where we went to the city and said, all right, we're going to have a mosaic in the foyer where the elevators are of the parking garage. So we should go look one day. And it's going to be of a woman at the mill. And so we would like to take that foyer and paint it not gray.
Sure.
So we'll paint it. I think it might be red. And at first they were like, and then we said, well, you have to buy a gallon of paint anyway. So how about if that gallon of paint's red? Right?
Yeah.
And then they were like, okay, we could do that. So they painted it red,
Yeah.
and the city, community services mounted them. It was a little challenging because they were heavy, covered them with plexiglass,
Mhm.
and they're beautiful. And they're next to the elevator, each elevator in the parking garage.
Very nice.
And so that was a wonderful community arts project, in an unusual place.
Hmm.
You don't think about making a parking garage look nice.
And you said there was a grant involved in that?
Right. So that was a grant from the New Hampshire State Council on the Arts.
Okay, gotcha.
Right.
Very
So
cool.
we've received a couple of grants from them for different projects.
I assume financing for some of these projects can be a big challenge.
Yeah, well, we get an appropriation each year,
Okay.
so we could use that. And then the State Arts Council, you write a grant and you're usually required to provide matching funds. But some of those matching funds can be in volunteer. They can be in kind. So for example, the community services mounting them, that's something that those gentlemen were paid, to do that. So that's a part of the match for funding.
Gotcha. Are there any other challenges that you guys encounter when it comes to identifying opportunities or, putting together a project, taking a project from start to finish?
I think a lot of our challenges are we have so many ideas,
Oh,
and there's
gotcha.
only 11
Yeah.
of us,
Right.
and we do have a limited budget, so there's only so many that we can really perform, and really some of it is just the sweat equity that the 11 of us have available to get these projects done. Part of our plan for this year is is to keep track in a better way of the projects from start to finish than we did. Sometimes they would linger often in municipalities, things move at a corporate, not a corporate rapid pace, but at a municipal slow pace. And you have to kind of get used to that. But along with that, especially in the last few years, the Arts Commission has worked in concert with so many different other nonprofits or other parts of the city. In fact, I have a meeting that I'm going to go to with the Community Trail when we're done here.
Yeah.
We work with the Community Trail. We work with the 400 Committee. And I mean, I can list forever. I think we probably have about 12 or 13 projects going on right now in various stages.
And having to juggle all of that. And
yep.
Gotcha.
And assign little sub-work groups to get them all done.
And it's all volunteer work, handling all this. Wow, that's awesome. So you guys don't just do public art. That's just like part of it. On the city website, I saw there was talk about busking and talks about street vendors and things like that. Where all do your responsibilities lie outside of just, the public art stuff that we've been talking about?
Well, I think the busking and the vendors, that's a good example of developing policy. So in other words, if you are a musician and you want to be able to play on the street in front of a restaurant, there had to be a system by which you could do that, so the police wouldn't pick you up.
Yeah.
Or the business owner would call up the police and say, hey, get rid of this guy. So we did develop a busking policy, and same with the vendor policy. So if a vendor got permission and wanted to sell something on the street, there is a way to be able to do that that's legal.
Yeah.
So whether or not people take advantage of that, I have to be honest and say, we have a very different environment post-COVID than we did pre-COVID. I mean, I think that's true everywhere. So things are different.
Yeah.
We haven't really had much call for busking, but we do have a lot of music at our restaurants. So maybe that, has kind of dissipated.
It's kind of like migrated from public to private spaces.
Exactly.
Okay.
And same with, an artist who wants to sell their wares on the street. Well, some of that was created before the Art Center was as big as it is, before we had more galleries on Central Ave, before the Cochico Arts Festival had, their art show in the summer. So the need for those may not be there, but you still have to have the system for being able to do it.
So the community demand, I suppose, has kind of shifted in how it's manifesting. Like the demand hasn't gone away, it's just changed where it's located.
Right.
Ah, okay.
And I think the vendor stuff sort of got lumped in the Arts Commission from years ago.
Yeah.
And the city didn't know where to put it. So I guess that's where they put it.
There you go.
We really don't get a call for it. And most of those would go to community services, probably, or the planning department.
Right. So we don't really get much of a call for that.
So it's listed there, but it just, in practicality, y'all are not the ones who deal with it.
Not really. I mean, if someone made a request, we certainly would, deal with it for sure. But we just don't really.
I look at that type of stuff and I'm like, this is an opportunity because, the cost of doing business or the cost of getting your art out there is so high, right? Like you have to be accepted at a gallery or, you have to have a physical establishment to be able to sell things. And so when you can reduce the cost of engaging the community from the individuals who live there, there's so much benefit to that.
Yep.
So I think that like the street vendor stuff and the busking stuff, there's a lot of great things that can come from a community that can embrace on that type of stuff. When you're putting a project together, like you were talking about the parking garage mosaics and stuff like that, how do you measure the impact of that? How do you know, okay, we came together and this worked, or it didn't work?
Well, if you're doing it through a grant, you have to evaluate.
Yeah.
So you have to have an evaluation process in order to get the grant. So somehow, one of the ways you measure it is by how many children were involved. You interview children. We
Okay.
had a big event on the rooftop of the parking garage,
Yeah.
with the mayor, and families came. And for some of these families, it might have been the first time their children were honored. So that's one way.
And that's including the families, it's including the
Right.
kids, and now they're going to grow up with that.
Well, every time they go
Yeah,
park, when they
that's
grow up
that.
in park, they
Yeah.
can say, "Hey, I made that."
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
and then there's a physical contribution of them to the city.
Right.
That's
Right.
cool.
So, that's really, I think, how you evaluate.
Mhm.
And, I'm pretty sure there's not anyone who doesn't wait for the elevator and look at the mosaic.
Yeah.
So art has a cumulative effect in the city
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Is now there was a generous donor that fabricated the whale's tail that's sitting on top of that right
pool.
by the pool, by the playground at Henry Law Park. That we're also talking with the city about. There's a performance area there, the Rotary Arts Pavilion. And as part of, we're working not only with the Chamber of Commerce, but with the Recreation Department and the Children's Museum to put up some sunshades, because during some of the performances in the summer, it just gets so hot there that it's impossible to sit on those amphitheater seats.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of the cumulative effect, I guess, of working with so many of the agencies and so many of the departments.
So like once you guys have kind of made yourselves known or gotten involved with an agency, they know that they can reach out to you and say and consult with you in a way. It's like, oh yeah, I know exactly who to call to get involved on this.
Mhm. And just this week, the Graffiti Committee, which is a committee it's an ad hoc committee that advises the city council on graffiti and tagging and so on. And they really have a dual purpose.
Mhm.
The first purpose is to help identify negative graffiti
Okay.
and tagging. And the other part is to encourage creative street art.
Okay.
And so they came to us last night with a proposal to put up 3 different public art graffiti walls at different parks around the city. And we were able to contribute to that effort.
Yeah, very cool. And I liked how you said that you were talking about the putting in shades and stuff like that to make that art space more comfortable to be in. So there is a function to it in some cases where you guys it's not just all, hey, we're making the space more beautiful. It's also, we're making the space more functional in some
Right.
way.
Yep.
It's, hey, we're listening to the community's needs. We're identifying kind of where they're needing something to make a space better.
Mm-hmm. It's true.
Very cool. What over the years, and I think Jane, you've been involved since the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so from the beginning, and Cliff, you've been involved for the last
Almost 5 years.
5 years.
Yeah.
Okay, over y'all's time here, what have been some of the most impactful ways that y'all have contributed to the art in the city?
A couple of years ago, we really just wanted the Arts Commission to come to the table,
Okay,
but now we're at the table.
yeah. So that just having a seat, that
Having
right
a seat
there.
at the table.
Oh, okay.
And the city listens,
Mm.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they definitely do. I mean, that's been, again, back to the functionality of what the Arts Commission does is we are there to facilitate art.
Mm.
But not only that, but we're there to facilitate the interaction between entities too.
Mm.
Working with the 400, and the 400 will celebrate the 400 years that Dover has been settled. But they're a 501c3. They're not like a city organization. They're their own private organization.
Mm-hmm.
But we work with them to help them to come up with some of their art needs too.
Gotcha. So you're volunteering and everything. What made you, Jane, you want to, like, you're very proud of having a seat at the table. You've been here since the beginning. You volunteer all of these years. What made you want to do this?
Well, my career was in arts administration.
Mm-hmm.
So when I left the job that I had and I moved to Dover, I ended up having another arts administration job. And then I realized that's just what I'm good at.
Gotcha.
And I've always worked for a nonprofit, so which, I was paid, but it's a nonprofit, so you don't always feel like you are. And so that, and I'm a visual artist, and it's im important to me to make a contribution to my community.
Hmm.
And that's how.
Yeah. So your past work experience has really
Yeah.
influenced you on
Yeah.
this. Okay. And Cliff?
Well, I had a bunch of careers. I was in radio for a lot of years.
Okay.
And I switched over from the radio side to record companies and traveled a lot there. And I retired from the record industry in 2018. But during that severance period, I went to attend what the Dover Chamber puts together is a Citizen Leadership Academy.
Okay.
And basically every year they have citizens sign up to learn all about community services, to learn about the school department, to learn about the police department, the fire department. And it's a 10-week period where every week a different aspect of the city comes in.
Hmm.
And at the end they say, hey, wouldn't you like to be on a board or a commission or a committee? And so I signed up for the Arts Commission because it's always been a love of mine. So that's how I got there.
So you being involved in radio, you said, for how many years were you doing that?
25 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man. Is any interesting experiences while you were involved in radio? Did you get to
we
meet
did
any
go-
famous people?
Well, see, the thing is, this is it kind of goes back to what Jane was saying about, giving back to the community and volunteering is in radio, I had a lot of opportunities to be on boards of directors and to volunteer for different organizations. And then when walkathons came or fundraising came, I could participate in it. But then when I switched over to the music industry, there was a lot of travel involved and a lot of it on weekends. So if I had joined an organization, they'd have said, hey, our book sales this weekend, can you? And I go, oh, sorry, I have a concert in Cleveland. I can't be there. But leaving that travel responsibility left me a lot more time in my retirement to give back and be part of it.
Very cool.
I think for both of us in our careers, we were surrounded by the arts.
Yeah.
And so I have to say, although I don't miss certain parts of, being an executive director, I really do miss like being surrounded by the arts every single day.
Yeah.
Having the opportunity to see and hear, incredible artists and witness unbelievable transformations. And, it's so gratifying. And so I do miss that.
Hmm.
So I do think that for everyone, I think on the Arts Commission has a true love of the arts.
And this is kind of their way of getting back in touch with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
So y'all have talked about how y'all are supporting the community and trying your best to get involved and give back to it. How can the community support the Arts Commission?
What do you think?
Well, I think if there's one of the imperatives that when we were in our retreat, we talked about was to publicize the Arts Commission a little bit, not so much to pat ourselves on the back for what we do, but to garner more public support and perhaps some more volunteerism, because as we've repeated over and over, we're just 11 volunteers.
Yeah.
And even last night, there was an artist who came to the meeting just to see what's the Art Commission all about. And we hopefully we've hooked him in to be a volunteer as well. So when events come up, we can have some volunteers and not just those of us sitting at the table.
Right. So I think it's really the community could help by just being more involved.
Yeah.
And be a volunteer. You don't have to come to a meeting every month. You could just express what your, interest is and work on a project. I think one of the challenges is that for example, the planning board doesn't have to publicize itself. The community trail doesn't really have to publicize itself too much, but the Arts Commission does. So it is a little bit different. We have a couple of people working on marketing, like how do we represent ourselves to the community?
Yeah.
How do we get the word out of what we do? It's a challenge.
Yeah, yeah. Messaging and connecting
It's
with
really a
people.
challenge,
Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
And often people think we just, should be hosting events, and that isn't really what we're about.
Because events cost money to
Yeah,
produce and put
right.
on and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. And there's only 11 of us.
Yeah.
So we really can't do that. But if you have an idea and you want to come to us, there's 11 super smart people on that committee who can help you figure out how to do it.
Yeah, yeah. What are some of y'all's favorite artists that over the years you've developed a fondness for? You think that they really have impacted you?
Oh gosh. Well, I was in Spain this summer, and I went to the Picasso Museum, and I have to say I was just so struck by his brilliance.
Yeah.
And that as a child, he was an incredibly prolific artist, and then, you know, painted until he was in his 90s. And, as he said, he learned to paint as a child.
Mm-hmm.
So for a visual artist, that would be, I guess, my choice.
I heard that Picasso produced like something like 70,000
Oh,
paintings
huge.
over
And
his
there's like
lifetime.
4 museums
Wow.
that he has. That's just his work.
Yeah.
And then Andrea Bocelli is my absolute favorite singer.
Yeah. I don't know much about Andrea. What type of music?
He's an
Opera singer.
opera singer.
Opera singer.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So Picasso and Andrea.
Yeah, that's my 2 favorite. Yeah.
I'm going to go with one that's local and rather new for me, and that's Jill Nooney.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Jill operates she's a sculptor in metal, and she and her husband formed Bedrock Gardens in Lee,
Mhm.
New Hampshire. And Bedrock Gardens is a beautiful garden of topiaries and creative plantings, but in amongst those are some of Jill's works. She works in the wintertime when it's hot in her foundry with a welder to put metal art together. And she makes wonderful, whimsical creations, and
Yeah.
it's worth a trip to go to Bedrock Gardens. We also installed some of her art on the community trail, which you can see where the community trail it crosses Fisher Street. There are 2 of her cubes there.
So
There are metal sculptures
a
there.
little taste of what Bedrock Gardens
Yep.
has
Yep.
that you can go check out.
Yep.
Yes.
So our theme for this season is building bridges
Mm-hmm.
and overcoming disagreement. That's what we're trying to talk about. And we're asking all of our guests, what are some ways that people in a community can overcome disagreement and build bridges with each other and get past that?
Well, I think, if you want to make it kind of art-based,
Okay.
Art is an equalizer.
Hmm.
Okay, so maybe it's singing together.
Okay.
Maybe, look what's going on in Ukraine.
Mhm.
It's coming together and celebrating your culture,
Hmm.
or, coming together and being creative.
Yeah.
It might even be making a garden, anything that like helps you to connect to someone else that you maybe don't agree with their policies,
Mhm.
but it doesn't mean you don't like them or can't understand them, as a person.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think as an arts administrator, I was always having to prove why the arts, are valuable, like particularly in schools.
Mhm.
It's an equalizer.
Mhm.
It just levels the playing field. I don't care how smart you are or how smart you think you're not. It levels the playing field.
Mm.
And so once you introduce the arts to people, you're all the same.
Yeah. So deepening your relationships with people through art.
Through the arts, through, I think, any kind of kinesthetic opportunity, whether it's building a garden is creative too.
Yeah.
So not just thinking of the arts as painting or pottery or, singing or dancing. And, it's all of those art and culture.
Because like plays and movies,
Yeah,
and,
all of it.
novels and all of that is art.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, watch a movie and have a conversation afterwards.
Hmm.
All those kinds of things. I think, I think like the library is a really good example of that. They offer something for everyone.
Hmm.
They have concerts, they have lectures. I've been at lectures with an individual that I really don't agree with, but we could come together on what we heard.
Nice. I like that.
And the Woodman Museum does the same thing. They
Yep.
have a Dover Day coming up on April 22nd.
Ah.
It is, it'll be open admission, but also all the different organizations within the city they each get a table at this all-day festival too.
Nice.
A little bit of history and a little bit of togetherness.
And I mean, have you been through the Woodman?
I haven't been through it.
Oh my gosh.
We just moved here in October, and I think they were closing
Oh,
up.
you're
Yeah,
right. They
yeah.
probably were. But,
They
there's
open
something for
tomorrow.
everyone there.
Yeah. I did
Yeah.
talk to Jonathan about it, and it seems like a really exciting museum.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
He was telling me about the fluorescent rocks and the 10-foot polar bear and stuff.
that, and they also have archives. Like I have been there for another project, and they have like the original prints for calico, because here in Dover is where they began to design the calico print. And so they have some of those original textiles that were made in the mills. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
cool.
It really is.
So our last question is about Dover itself. What do you think the city of Dover should focus on next? I know you were already talking about some projects that are coming up.
But that's one. I think housing is at the top of everyone's list.
Okay.
From speaking to many of the folks within the city and just citizens, that there just isn't enough affordable housing, especially for people who support the economy in less than highly paid positions, and that's kind of a shame. And I certainly hope that some of the new developments that are coming are going to take care of that situation. But
Yeah.
because housing it's a nationwide problem, but particularly in New Hampshire and in Dover too.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think I would agree. And I think also in sort of along that theme is for Dover not to forget our roots. We're from an indigenous nation. And then, the mills were built on the backs of Canadians who didn't speak English. And, so we're a melting pot. And I hope that we don't become a community that is the only people who can afford to live here are ones from far away.
So you're hopeful that the people who live in Dover can afford to stay in Dover. Yeah. That is, I hear people talk about, they'll use the word gentrification and things like that. And I have thought about that problem, and it seems like it's affecting so many, because Homewood, when I interviewed them, a gentleman there, he said the same thing. He said affordable housing, and that there are people who work in Homewood who can't afford to live in Homewood. And so, it's really messing up kind of how the community operates.
I think it's also really important that when we look at, there's a difference between workforce housing and low-income housing. It's not the same thing. And I think that when we look at creating it, that we have to make sure that we are creative in how we think about how these other kinds of communities look, so that we don't build army barracks and say, you're low income, you can go live there.
Yeah.
So that we are thoughtful about how we create housing for everyone that people want to live in, that people respect, that people take pride in. because for a long time, even, in Dover, our low-income housing isn't very pretty. If we're going to create more of it, let's not create more housing that people are not very proud of.
Create a space that even,
Yeah.
they can afford to live there and
Be proud.
yeah. And they're like, this is mine.
Right. Right. And because, the excuse is, oh, well, we can't afford it. But I think we can't afford not to.
All right. Very cool. Is there anything else that you guys wanted to add to the show before we close it?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. I think we covered it all.
Yeah.
All right.
You did
great.
a great job.
Well,
Thank you so much.
no, thank you guys for coming on. I really appreciate y'all giving me your time and talking to us about some of the efforts that you are putting into the community. So
Sure.
Okay,
Thanks, Aaron.
thank you for listening to the Your City podcast. And I hope you enjoyed our talk today with Jane and Cliff. If you enjoyed the show, you can help us out by sharing it with somebody else that you think might enjoy it. It could be a friend, family member, coworker, someone that you think would enjoy this type of content. We don't have a very big advertising budget. Most all of it comes from just me putting in my graphics abilities to kind of promote the show. So any word of mouth recommendations that we can get, we would appreciate you taking the time to do it. Thanks again for listening, and we will catch you on the next one.